Module 6 is all about handling case studies and situational questions that can be posed in interviews. I call this module Deconstruct the Problem. In some industries and in some companies, it's very common for interviewers to ask case study type questions where they're testing your analytical ability, your communication skills, your creativity, and even how you respond under pressure. These problems can seem quite challenging, but with the application of a couple of techniques, it's possible to work your way through any problem and come to a reasonable conclusion. The first idea is to put structure to the problem and make your thinking explicit. Let me use an example to describe this. In a case study question, it's quite common that they give you a lot of information, possibly to confuse you, or they do the opposite and they give you almost nothing at all. In a consulting firm interview, you might be told something like, "Oh, I've got this client in the retail industry and they're not making so much money. What do you think?" In any scenario like this, what you want to do is find a start point, ask the interviewer some questions, gather some information, move forward, and ask some more. So, in this case, for example, you might say something like, "Well, I'd better understand the cost structure. Can you tell me about the relationship between the fixed and variable costs?" "Okay, I've got that. Now it seems like the fixed costs are the largest proportion. Can you split that into people costs and other costs?" And as you do this, you gradually build a picture. And with all business problems, there's a set of fundamental dynamics that will shape the situation. The market, whether it's in growth or decline, the competitors, the business model, the cost structure. And by working through these and by explaining where you're going, you'll gradually come to a hypothesis and a solution will drop out. The second idea is to use underlying principles. This is a very good way of thinking, particularly with broader situational questions where you need a foundation to work from. Again, it's easier if I explain with an example. So I'll take another business situation. Imagine that the interviewer says, "What are your thoughts about the structure of the sales force?" Rather than diving straight in with a solution, you can refer to an underlying principle and say, "Well, it's good to structure along the lines of where you require most expertise. If the biggest difference we have is between types of customer, then we might want to structure according to customer segment teams. Alternatively, if we've got very different products and different propositions and you need specific expertise around these in order to sell them well, then I might structure the sales team according to those products." So as you can see, using the principle regarding how to organize gives you a sound basis to answer the problem. You can do exactly the same with very different types of questions. In a mathematical problem where you're thinking out loud, you could be saying something like, "Oh, this is a problem about conditional probabilities. What I need to understand here is under what conditions certain things are more likely to happen." This is a powerful way of answering. If you can identify underlying principles, whether they're business, legal, physical, mathematical, or social, they can guide you to a solution. And if you think out loud as you're working through this type of question, you'll also demonstrate to the interviewer your knowledge of the subject matter. The third idea is that in some types of situational questions, there are openings for you to use your creativity. Showing your imagination, that you've got some lateral thought as you build up the picture in a case study can be very useful. First, because it can make you more memorable, and second, rather like when we talked about articulating plans, it's a good way of changing the nature of the conversation with the interviewer from being a cross-examination into a joint discussion of ideas. The key point in this module is don't be daunted by what can seem like tricky problems that are set to catch you out. Just take your second pause, as we discussed in Module 5, find a start point and work your way forward. The more you can think out loud, the more you'll engage the interviewer, and you'll also fill any potentially awkward silences while you're thinking about where to go next.